I'm using my phone as a mirror because I'm lazy. I want to sit on the couch, and because I'm gonna shave with my electric shaver, and that's why I'm recording this. Just because the camera will turn off otherwise. So don't get it twisted. I'm not that vain. Now I intend to erase this, but by the end of it, who knows? What if I don't? It's possible. And to all you young people, fuck you. First off, it used to be. I spent time, like a lot of people, kind of yo-yoing. I naturally, my body is naturally inclined to gain weight. Like apparently I have a really great endocrine system that wants to preserve and protect all the calories I get. Which in a famine, skinny people will be fucked, right? Because they get all weak and barely be able to function. It's people like me that don't lose weight easy that would be like, oh man, you're lucky I'm nice, because otherwise I'd have to kick you out of your nice house and stuff. But instead, maybe I would live in your pool house, I guess. I don't know. If you got a nice pool, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, through my life, I have spent times when I just didn't give a shit about how I looked, which is really what it was. I just stopped caring. That I gained weight. I was up to like 300 pounds at one time, which is, I know, nutty. When I was in the military, I was like, 15% body fat. That's good. That's not bad. I ran all the time. I probably burned 7,000 calories a day. So if I'm not running is really the one thing. If I'm not running, I could be working my ass off, but if I'm not running every day, like 2 miles at least, I'll gain weight. About a year ago, I started taking Mounjaro, which is one of those GLP-1 things or whatever, and it actually worked. I dropped like 30 pounds, and now I'm down. I'm still fat, but I'm down to 210, something like that, 215 maybe. But I was 180 pounds when I was shit in 8th grade or something, so that's not that weird. Okay, yeah, shaved, awesome. Yeah, I have to shave between my eyes. Otherwise, if the world were ever to end and shaving became a thing of the past or a luxury that I did not have, I would end up looking like a monkey, because my sideburns basically grow right into my cheeks right here, and that grows basically straight down into my beard and mustache. So I would literally, you'd be able to see my eyes and nose, and my eyebrows basically would grow together. So you'd see my eyes and my nose. And I think nothing else. My forehead does not grow hair, luckily. So I'd have eyes, nose, and a forehead. And my ears, as I've gotten older, there is an attempt occasionally to like kudzu to spread and to be on my ears just a little bit. But thank God it's not hardcore. But I have to say, I have occasionally like, oh, I see a hair and shaved it right there or whatever. Weird shit happens when you get older. My eyebrows, I actually haven't done it in a while, but I have to trim my eyebrows with electric, like a buzz cutter kind of thing once in a while. Otherwise, I'd look like one of those guys with the big old eyebrows. I guess that's how it would be, like this. Jazz hands, but with my eyebrows. Anyway, so yeah, I'll post this. Why not? But anyway, fuck you as if you're young, because I wasted my youth. I didn't really. I have to say, I did not waste my youth. I had a lot of fun. I never had kids, So I was footloose and fancy free, no big time responsibility. Been married 3 times. I'm on my 3rd marriage now, which I don't intend to end it anytime soon. It was the first person I ever fell in love with in my life when I was like 16, But she already had a boyfriend, and I was new to school. She barely knew me. And then we became really good friends. And then she got married to that dude and left town because he was the first one leaving, basically. And we lived in Iowa, so everybody wanted to pretty much get the fuck out. I never saw her again until I was 42, and she just happened to be getting a divorce or wanting to get a divorce really bad, been trying to get out of a relationship. And she, mentioned that to me, and I'm like, well, shit, I've been divorced twice. It's easy to do. I did it both times by myself. And she's like, well, didn't it ruin your credit? And I'm like, well, I don't know about you, but the first one cheated on me, so I wasn't about to put up with that. And then the second one was straight fucking crazy. She had, and it's not against her. She was actually a wonderful person. She had bipolar really, really severely. And so when I first met her, she was just an angel. And I never saw her. I was, again, when you get married, before you get married, hang around somebody for like at least a year. Okay. We got married 2 months after we met, pretty much. Yeah, that wasn't enough time. And I had never seen her like run out of her medicine, which is no big deal, to run out of your medicine. You just say, you go get some more. I don't know who that person is, but they're wild. The problem was she literally did it over and over and over again. And she would tell me, in the end, we had these big old discussions once I recovered from, somebody trying to kill me and stuff. She resented having to take medicine to be called to what she literally said. She resented having to take medicine to be normal. And I'm like, fuck, man, please do it though. It's wonderful. 100 years ago, there was no medicine for that. And people, I don't know what they did with those people, but I know one thing, they didn't live with them. And I come home from work one day, and I opened the door to come in, and I just saw this. It looked like one of those troll dolls with the hair like this, ran past the door, ran past the foyer, crying, big old crying face, hair like that, with a butcher knife in her hand, like this, up like this, in her underwear, just ran past the door. And I'm like, and I just slowly backed out, closed the door, and stood out there. And I'm like, what do I do with this, I'm getting home where you'd think it would be, at the end of the day from work. And I wanted to go back to work, but I went in and faced it. And it was all over a phone number. A phone call that was the wrong number, apparently. And she somehow built it in her head that was somebody like a girlfriend or something of mine, which I didn't have a girlfriend. I wasn't cheating. I never cheated in my whole life. Had called, got her, and then hung up. And I don't know where she was earlier in the day with that. I mean, when I left, she seemed fine, still in bed, whatever. But by the time I got home, she had worked it up in her head that I was cheating on her, and she had let it go, boo! But she was also out of medicine. And that was 4 solid years. And I was still not going to divorce. I didn't want to give up on her. It was my fuck up. I didn't make the right decision, so I was trying to make the decision right. And so I decided I'd go back in the military after 9/11 happened. And I lost 30 pounds, in like 3-4 months. And I went from never running once in 10 years to running anywhere from 2 to 5 miles in a day every time, at a time. Just about tried to kill myself with that getting back into shape thing. And cut my hair off. I had hair down the middle of my back at the time. And I just cut it all off one day because I was prepping to go. They wouldn't let me return to service. Prayer service people were they were trying to shrink the military still. And they told me I could come back, but only if I was going to go for Special Forces or for Ranger Battalion. And I'm like, it would have just about killed me in like 20 years old, 21 years old, when I got out. But by this time, it was 10 years, over 10 years later, and I would have been, fuck, man, it would have killed me for sure. But, you know, I was willing at that point. It was either going to kill me or I was going to have this life, you know, which was getting wild, you know. And so, so I went from 0 to 60 again to get ready for Ranger School, okay? Because that was the only way they were going to let me back in. I was a communications person, man. I was good at my job, but my job didn't exist anymore. You know, with digital technology, my job went from being analog in the signal battalion to that job was absorbed by the only other job in the signal battalion that had that high level of security. And since they were no longer taking prior service because they were trying to shrink the size of the military and how much it cost, the only way I could come back in is if I was going to go Special Forces or Ranger Battalion. And so I'm like, you know, believe it or not, Ranger Battalion's easier than trying to get through the Q course. And so I was like, you know, worst case scenario, I have to go. And so it'd been over 10 years, so I'd have to go back through basic again, which is, I mean, was still a killer, but nothing like Ranger School. So I would need basic training just to get ready for Ranger School. And that's if I was going to survive. So the worst case scenario is I would go through basic training, and then from basic training, I would go through and then from basic training, I would go through jump school. And then after jump school, I would go right to Ranger School. They wouldn't even have me go into an AIT next. They would want, I wouldn't even get to choose my job, right? I would go through Ranger School, and then the Ranger Battalion would choose for me what my job was going to be, whether it was going to be in a communications unit or whether it was going to be as an infantryman. But I actually didn't plan on living through Ranger School. So I figured worst case scenario is I go through basic training, I go through jump school, and then I die in Ranger School because I wasn't going to give up. They would have to kill me. But I mean, you know, that's the only way you make it through Ranger School is to be willing to trade your life. People that aren't willing to trade their lives do not fucking succeed at Ranger School. And that's when they're 22 years old. I was like 38. I don't know. I wasn't 38. It was like 30, somewhere around there. It was like 1998, 99. Oh, no, it wasn't. That's when I started thinking about it. But I really put the stank on it in 2001, just after 9/11. And just after 9/11 is when I started getting back into shape, and I was ready to go 3-4 months later. And I had made huge changes in my life, but really abruptly. And apparently that was too much for my wife at the time. And you know, I was about to leave in a week to go up to the MEPS and then to fly out to a basic training, to sign my life away and then fly up to basic training. And she said she wanted a divorce, which was kind of crushing at the time because I had made my mind up that I was going to suffer anything rather than divorce, you know. And half of it was for her. I didn't want to abandon her. She was really in trouble in her life, you know. When I got married to her, her mom and dad paid for a really nice wedding and all that kind of stuff. My first marriage had not been a nice wedding, but it was a JP with a ring I found, literally. This wedding was really, really nice and probably expensive. And when her dad met me, you know, when I walked up the aisle kind of a thing, and her dad was already there or whatever, and he met me, he said, and when it was done and we were walking away, he said, "Now she's your problem." And I was like, what? We had not had real deep conversations before that. I mean, like I say, it was only months. And, you know, that didn't really stick in my head, but boy, it sure did within a few months after that. I was like, oh, he wasn't joking. I thought he was joking kind of at that day. But, so yeah, I didn't want to abandon her. Her existence after puberty had probably been difficult. And it reminded me of my brother Jim after puberty. years later, we found out after his death that he had had what's called a central nervous system accident by a psychiatrist that we just happened to be neighbors with and that knew him. Um, he told my mom that, and um, and so I started doing reading on it and stuff like that. Anyway, and then I met my second wife after that, years after that. Um, anyway, she wanted a divorce, and I really by that time had already made up my mind that I was going to suffer anything rather than give up on us. You know, I really thought that part of it would maybe even help her to kind of move away from her support system right there, because I thought maybe part of her support system was enabling her or not encouraging her enough to be able to stand on her own feet and take her medicine and, you know, get medical advice and start treating her, you know, start really understanding it, her medical stuff, her mental illness stuff as for what it is. You know, it's a manageable defect. I've got tons of defects and I managed them, you know. And but anyway, she decided she wanted a divorce, and I was kind of crushed. And um, I was just about to go, and this happened, and it threw me off. In an attempt to save our marriage, I went to the recruiter and said, "Hey, I'm out. You know, my wife wants a divorce. I've got to fix this and stuff." And God, I wish I would have taken his advice, but he said, "Hey, if she wants a divorce, you know, better for you. Go ahead and go. Now you don't have to worry about people at home." And man, I wish I'd have taken his advice, because it would have been better for everybody, her and me. But it still didn't work out. I tried in vain, and within about 6 months, it was obvious that it was not going to be fixed. And then I had already kind of flushed my opportunity to go back to the military, and the rest is history. So there's a saying, and that in you know, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, because sometimes if your plans aren't part of the real plan, the big plan. I mean, and I'm not a big religious person or whatever, but I do believe in predestiny. Okay, I believe that if you think of our existence is as a program, you know, like The Sims or whatever. I think that somebody wrote this entire thing, you know, maybe millions of years ago, you know, prior to obviously the human beings existing or whatever, and then somebody hit play or run or whatever, and the program started to happen, and it started to, you know, play out like it was written. um, I don't know. That's my theory, that we're part of a program, and I think that to make every single thing around us work, we've got to play our part. And our part, imagine a key with all the key cuts on it, you know, they're very specific, otherwise it won't turn the lock. Imagine that key cut having billions of cuts in it, you know, so it's a pretty intricate key, not even a key maybe, but like a sphere, but with billions of little specific cuts in it that have to line up perfectly with all the other little keys around it. Otherwise, their lifetime won't work. You know, the blades of grass, the birds in the air, all the things that are supposed to happen that we play a part in. You know, whether it's a very very small part that we never even know we took place in, or whether it's a big part that we can point to. You know, um, we have to follow our program, and so I planned from the time that I was 8 years old to do something that was not part of the plan for me. And no matter what I did, it has never, if I wanted to do something that wasn't supposed to happen, it just fucking wouldn't work. And then plenty of times, and I mean plenty of times, I got really lucky when there was absolutely no reason I should have been. In fact, I just basically walked into stupidly or did really something dumb and still wound up small like a rose, you know. Um, Between both of those kinds of examples, I've really put together over time, and then also really being a reader and educating myself in ancient religious beliefs of all kinds from every culture, and sort of putting the little clues together. And I've decided that, you know, like I when I was 12 years old, I walked away from Christianity. And well, I started to walk away from Christianity. I didn't walk away from Christianity officially till my 20s. But the last time I ever went to church, I was at a church in the military because I was required to go. And the chaplain had us praying, and they're passing a plate around, which I was totally used to. I was a Baptist church I was raised in. And he said, "Bless you if you give." And then I was like, motherfucker, that's bullshit. And between that and all the televangelists and all that kind of stuff over the years, I just said, no, this isn't real. You know, I read the Bible cover to cover 5 times by the time I was 15. It didn't make any sense. It contradicted itself so many places. My father always was a good man, and he was a hardcore Christian, and he always said the most important thing, after we had zillions of discussions, he said, read the red letters, and that was always what Jesus said, those things. And he said, follow that, you know. And he was a smart guy, my dad. And I realized that you know, a whole lot of the Bible was not legitimate. It didn't follow my conscience. The whole thing about gay people, the whole thing about, you know, always honoring your parents. Some people have bad parents, you know. I mean, if Hitler had kids, they should not have to have honored him because he was a piece of shit, you know. They should want to be better than him and not copy him, right? There was a bunch of things that didn't make sense, a bunch of things that were designed by people, you know. But anyway, so I've always kind of lived the stuff that Jesus said to do, just because they were just being a good person and smart, you know. But anyway, that's the end of this conversation. I really was just shaving. I think I am going to post this. Hey, you guys, it's only 20 minutes. Fuck you. Don't be having a cry over this. Okay, I got to go. I'll see you later. I have a great day. Bye.